You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group with the same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Spreaker is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. This podcast is particularly not for entertainment purposes, and the views expressed by the host of this podcast are opinion-based. However, they do not come without facts, research, statistics, and truth, whether other people like it or not, and no matter how harsh or complicated it may be. This is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
And welcome to episode 270 of the Week in Review on Spreaker, the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. Taylor Phillips and Ed Smith. Ed, we got a jam-packed show to scour and run through, so let's get to it.
Absolutely, and I've got a lot of things to share my mind on after what went down this past week. More ways than one.
Absolutely. Let's get to Tigers first.
That one is long gone!
Tigers snapped a 9-game losing streak. They lost 9 straight before winning it just yesterday, just Sunday afternoon on the West Coast in San Diego. They lost 6-2 to the Mariners, 5-4, 7-5, and 9-6. They got swept by the Seattle Mariners at Safeco Field. In one of those games, the finale, Daniel Norris allowed 5 runs, and then F-Rod, not K-Rod anymore, F-Rod, gave up a grand slam to Robinson Cano. Then the day after, he got released, while Alex Presley, one of their outfielders, was placed on the 7-day concussion disabled list, but some have not expected when Francisco Rodriguez is going to get released, but they sure as hell wanted him to be released all right.
Yeah, especially with him essentially complaining outwardly, publicly about, not liking his role on the team. Well, like I mentioned before, if he wasn't sucking complete ass the way he is right now, he would have been put in the spot where he was, where he would have lost his supposed job and eventually his outright job, period. So he's got really, in my opinion, no one else to blame but himself in that situation for the predicament that he currently finds himself in.
Well, definitely complaining about his mop-up job and the lack of communication, like we went over like a week or two ago, and that's the price he pays. You complain, you get shipped out. Period. No excuses, no exceptions, no questions asked. You're gone, buddy. So the Tigers' record is 33-42. And I still think they're in last place in the division, aren't they?
Well, if not, they're very near. And it's quite embarrassing when you consider that this team has, the biggest payroll advantage out of all the teams in the American League Central at being at almost near $200. Remember, this is even more so than the Cleveland Indians team that just went out this past offseason to get Encarnacion from the Toronto Blue Jays, and they're doing a much better job. Now, granted, right? They're more better set up because they just came off a World Series appearance, more so than what the Tigers can say over the past 2 years. But still, the payroll advantage that this team has over everybody else in the division, you would have thought that maybe they would be doing at least a semblance of a job better than this atrocity that they're committing in front of our very eyes right now.
Well, definitely. Just $2 million wasted down the drain. Can you imagine that? Greed just comes right back to haunt the Illiches at Alavila, then Dave Dombrowski back in those years, and Brad Osmus, Jim Leland, special assistant to the general manager at Alavila. Everybody in the front office.
Yeah, it's basically, it reminds me of something that Jeff Moss posted on Twitter a few hours ago regarding comparison window of how this team groups into the teams in the past, whether it be in baseball or football, of getting so close, getting all the fancy accomplishments, MVPs, somewhat postseason success, but at the end of the day, not walking away with a World Series championship or a World Championship period. It's tough to say it, but they've become what the Buffalo Bills were in those early 90s teams. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls but couldn't get the job done. Or those mid-90s Cleveland Indians teams that got so close but couldn't get the job done. Same thing now, especially when you look at the window that is now apparently closed. Other key factors and players, like, for instance, Max Scherzer and Rick Porcello now doing better away from the team. And you think about contracts on this team that might be complete albatrosses that, may be too tough to move, period. Factor all that in together, it's an absolute mess, an unfortunate mess that, if you ask anybody, they wouldn't have minded going through if they would have had at least one, if not 2 World Series championships by now. So the fact that they've gone through all of this, they end up with 0 hardware at the end, it's what makes it a much more bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah. 2006, they got ousted by the Cardinals in 5 games, and then they got swept in 2012 by the Giants, San Francisco.
And if you ask me, they probably would have had a good chance to win it all in 2013 if they not gagged away the ALCS.
Yeah, in Games 2 and Game 6, gave a game-tying grand slam to then Red Sox David Ortiz, and then Game 6, Jose Veras gave a game-winning grand slam in the 7th inning to Shane Victorino. I remember all of it well.
Yeah, I've tried to block out some of the pain, that those memories have caused, but there's no getting around it, especially, of course, the infamous Ortiz homer, a grand slam where Torrey Hunter almost killed himself trying to get that ball, and that asshat police officer was celebrating it.
Well, he's a Boston police officer. He's just one of the Boston hometown fan base.
I understand.
That doesn't bother me.
I understood it. The shoe was on the other foot. That was just my own personal bias, saltiness coming through to the surface of that instance.
Right. But here at the Michigan Sports Truth, we have a tougher philosophy here in this podcast organization. Just so everybody knows. So, with that said, jumping over to Justin Verlander trade news, Justin Verlander, according to thescore.com, is unlikely to get traded unless the Tigers team retains its salary. And an injury update on Justin Verlander with his groin injury. He is actually ready for the series against the Kansas City Royals. So we expected Justin Verlander to be ready. It was just like we pointed out, it was a precautionary type of groin pull or some type of groin injury, but we knew it didn't last long.
Yeah, it clearly didn't affect him too much, considering that his last outing against Seattle, threw 4 or 5 innings of perfect baseball before, of course, the bullpen and vintage Sanderson would fuck it all up. But still, Verlander himself looked out good for the most part. It started to get a little haywire at the end of that outing with the bunt, then giving up a couple hits and then the run, but still, that was a game that should not have been blown, period, at all, no matter what. When you spot Verlander a 4-run lead, usually you close those games down. Unfortunately, as per usual, it seems, a total microcosm of this season, and in some ways of this era, when it mattered most, they couldn't get the job done and close it, and it came back to bite them.
Yep. So, speaking of the Tigers and the Royals, they have a 3-game series. Not until Tuesday. they have Monday off, and then Friday through Sunday, they have a 4-game series, including a Saturday doubleheader. I'm going to try to get Miranda McCoy to try to analyze this with me on my post-game editions on Talk Shoe, while Lois Tenor does his national sports reports. It's still a shame I never got you and Lois Tenor acquainted yet.
I'm sure it can still happen one day.
Yep. We just have to find you some time to sometime probably at night, not too late, but somewhere around 10:30 or 11, that kind of time slot to for you and Lois Tenor to talk to one another on the air. So, that's baseball. That's the Tigers. We transition to hockey and the Red Wings. Well, more exposure of how terrible Ken Holland is as a general manager today. The Red Wings lose center Tomas Nosek, now a former Grand Rapids Griffin, who just won the Stanley Cup this year with the Grand Rapids Griffins, to the Vegas Golden Knights. They lose him to the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL Expansion Draft. They left Peter Mrazek unprotected, and we expected Peter Mrazek to be claimed by the Knights in that expansion draft, but it didn't happen.
Well, I think that was largely due to the fact that Vegas had made up in their minds that they were going to get Marc-Andre Fleury from the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, not to mention, and also when you add in that they got in, I forgot that person's name, but they got the starting goalie from the Colorado Avalanche as well.
Oh, yeah, Calvin Pickard.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want to log jam that position, no matter how good we may think of Mrazek to be. In essence, it's kind of a good thing because it will look right. What the hell is a new expansion franchise supposed to be doing? Log jamming any position, let alone goaltender. Of course, I kind of figured, they want to take. They want to make an impact to help sell some tickets. What better way than to take a known player from a now back-to-back Stanley Cup winning team at a vital position that was the Penguins, and let's say which one. How about how Fleury might perform this season? He still performed well when it mattered most, especially when it came to terms of help closing out those last few games to win the Cup. So the Vegas Knights are trying to bank on that to get some bankroll, if you will, get that cachet. Like, wow, we got this player, we got this name to try, help boost up spike up some attendance for this inaugural season and this, the new arena at T-Mobile in downtown Vegas. So I figured that was going to be the case. If they would take Fleury, then more likely Mrazek would be safe. But I think it's a shitty job that shows really, imagine if things would not have gone so fortunate, because after all, the whole character assassination, it appears it seems to come down from Red Wings inner circle and management, whatever the case may be, trying to discredit Peter Mrazek or try to put up an excuse as to why he was left on the unprotected list, whether it's players like Justin Abdelkader and Jonathan Erickson, among others. I'm sure others, they're much more shittier, and names like escape me at the moment because I don't want to remember their horrid play. Yet somehow they get left on the protected list because they're Kenny's boys. That's the thing about Ken Holland may not like Mrazek's attitude. Please, it's not because he didn't want to be your boy. Okay, it's just like in his boys club, the way he is with the other players and on this team that Ken shows loyalty to, which is sickening.
Yeah, and I'm becoming even more numb to all this Ken Holland loyalty type of thing, all the Chris Ilitch loyalty stuff. It just makes the Tigers and Red Wings look a lot worse in today's world. And there's only one way to stop all this, and we know what. And it's probably not going to be for a long time, for like 1 or 2 years, like you pointed out. And it's just, as for Chris Sale, it's just sell the Tigers and Red Wings. And it will happen eventually. Not now, not soon, but a year or two, like Justin Spiro pointed out.
Yeah, we all got to remember it still took a little bit of a while for the Pistons to get sold after Bill Davidson died. So
yeah.
I would expect a similar timetable process for the Red Wings, especially since it's two teams. Because remember, the Davidsons only own the Pistons, the Ilitches both own the Wings and the Tigers. So I wouldn't be surprised if and when a deal gets done, it's a package deal to get both teams at the same time.
Absolutely. It's all they can afford at this point. And speaking of all who can afford in this present time, the NHL could only afford one expansion team. Like a couple years to a few years from now, maybe the NHL can afford adding one more team to the Western Conference. Maybe one from the Central Division, which should be renamed as the Midwest Division in my realignment concepts, conference realignment concepts. The Vegas Golden Knights should be in the Pacific Division, no doubt about that. That still doesn't put the Arizona Coyotes in the Central Division. They're still Pacific. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman has to figure something out to try to fill that slot. So, speaking of the Red Wings, they went into the NHL Draft, releasing their 2017-2018 preseason and regular schedules. By the way, they're at Boston to drop the puck on their preseason September 19th on a Tuesday. And then Thursday, they open the regular season on October 5th at the new Little Caesars Arena against the Minnesota Wild. Not only a home opener, but a season opener at their inaugural Little Caesars Arena. That's its inaugural season. But that said, the Red Wings drafted center Michael Rasmussen in the 2017 NHL Draft from Canada at number 9 overall, and goaltender Keith Petruzzelli at 88 overall. I think that's all they drafted as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to look up the Red Wings website here and see if they drafted anybody else here.
I'm sure they made a couple, because I think there was this was multiple picks. I think those are the ones that stand out the most, especially the first round picks. While you look it up, I'll just say this, that the reasoning or logic or whatever excuse that defenders will try to pick, don't even bother, because there was no reason in the world that a team that you know for sure has a glaring weakness and need at the defenseman position, there was no excuse for them to take a fucking center with their first round pick.
Yeah, they already had. I think they were just trying to fill the center slot for Tomas Nosek, who they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. That's it.
Yeah, even still, that will fall into the category of people that might try to use that as an excuse to defend this move. Well, we've been saying for years, it's literally been, 5 years now since Nicholas was retired, the Red Wings need to replenish at the defenseman spot. Jonathan Ericsson and Nicholas Kronwall are the glaring examples of why they need to improve badly, and yet they still do this. So, again, when you have people asking or wondering why is the team in position or at the franchise in the state that they're in right now. It is moves like this that are a prime example, that are a microcosm of sorts as to why they are where they are right now.
Yeah, there's. I found four more. Defenseman Gustav Lindstrom, Lindstrom, not Lidstrom as in Nicholas Lidstrom, Lindstrom.
Well, isn't that ironic?
But they're like at least there's at least one NHL player named Lindstrom that was actually playing for the San Jose Sharks the last I saw. Then they got defenseman Kasper Kotkansalo, whichever you pronounce it. Right wing Lane Sablocki and Zach Gallant at right wing. So you got a center, two defensemen, and two right wingers, and a goaltender. So at least one of them can play your left wing too. But they got at least one player at like each position, if you know what I mean, except for left wing.
Yeah.
So July 1st is NHL free agency opening day. And Frank Vazner and Buck Gino are going to break it down for me next week on Spreaker while you, for private personal reasons, take your hiatus.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that greatly.
Yeah, my prayers passed along to you, by the way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nothing too serious, folks. All right, for those that might be listening, it's nothing too serious, but it's private matter that I want to handle personally. It won't keep me away a little bit while for the show, but I'll still be following and whatnot, sharing my thoughts. You guys still follow me on Twitter at Smith313 to get my thoughts and opinions on and reactions to what goes down and goes on in the sports world, especially about Detroit teams. So, but in terms of my focus and attention on trying to get to the show full time, it will be on brief hold. But I will be back at a undetermined time and date for sure.
Yep, that's true. So, just going to edit the info of this here. All right. So that's Red Wings and hockey news. Now we transition to basketball and Pistons here.
Left sideline, three, and he answers.
Finally, center Aron Baynes has declined an opt out of his $6.5 million option to become a free agent. It was only a matter of fucking time.
I love it.
Not only does it, and like you pointed out, it frees up more cap space, and like I pointed out several times in the Pistons past season, it gives center Boban Marjanovic more playing time. For God's sake.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure you are the captain. You waved the flag as a representative as captain of the Boban Marjanovic fan club. I have no problem with my membership there. So in terms of if this does lead to eventual more playing time for him, very happy for Boban. And like you mentioned also, Taylor, the $6.5 million that does free up in cash space. It's not much. It's not a lot. But it's something. It's better than nothing. Especially when you know that the salary cap will be rising again. Not as high as several thought. It'll be just shy of $100 million. It's still pretty high, around 99. So having that type of space available can allow the Pistons to do something, if not make a major splash. Then try to help lobby a needed signing for a spot off the bench or something like that. So I'm glad in that instance that it happened. But, it's tough to get too excited for a team where, there's good players on, but yet for some reason, due to, a lot of, I guess you could say, say the least, mental frustration with some of your key pieces, i.e. your center and point guard, but more importantly, more especially your center. It prevents you from wanting to enjoy this more. In a sense, makes you feel okay, this is a little bit of more of a rebuild than what we thought it was initially. So we're going to talk about it a little bit more in a second, but the fact that the Pistons for some reason aren't able to get some type of deal done to maybe move or exchange for the services of Andre Drummond, it's frustrating, a little bit laughable, and like I said, I guess I would say, I think you could agree, sums up the current state of the franchise.
Yeah, and they decided not to trade Andre Drummond after the NBA draft, which they selected shooting guard Luke Kennard from the Duke Blue Devils at number 12 overall. That was one of the top all-around shooters in the draft. That's all they did. They didn't trade up for number 10. More importantly, they didn't trade Drummond. I heard Jeff Moss tweet out a rumor at Jeff Moss DSR, the founder and editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, that he's rumored that the Pistons are trading Drummond to the Sacramento Kings for number 10 and keeping the 12th pick. I guess that didn't... Well, unfortunately, that just didn't happen.
No, it did not happen, and it just... I guess you could say that was my realization moment that maybe at this current moment, Andre Drummond's trade value is very overrated. It would seem to be. Because you would think a guy at his talent and his age, forget about the contract of saying how big it is, especially, I guess, I just mentioned to you that the cap is going to be rising, so they shouldn't be too concerned about that. You know what I mean? So it's got to be something else that turns them off of wanting to deal with potentially Drummond's services. Is the fact that he's still horrible at free throw shooting, or that he has his own mental lapses and mental blocks that prevents him from taking criticism or advice regarding
his free throw shooting.
Right. Because Stan Van Gundy, at a press conference the other day, said that, Drummond was hurt by the potential trade talk rumors, which, okay, dude, grow the fuck up, put your big boy pants on. You're making over $100 million. There's a reason why your name's being put as potential trade block rumors, is because, at this current moment, you're not fitting what we need here at this team. Okay? If you're making over $100 million for a contract, $25 million a year, going to be 28 by the time this contract is up. Why in the hell are you kept off the floor in crunch time? Because you can't shoot a free throw to save your life when it need be. You can pull it from half court, buzzer beaters in the quarter or whatever, but you can't hit a shot from the charity stripe. Give me a break. Okay, you want to talk about when your feelings were hurt? Please, grow up. Use it as motivation. I'm sure Steve Eisman didn't like the fact that he was almost traded to Iowa Centers, but he didn't see him bitch about it or hear about him bitch about it in public. He used that as motivation to help take himself to the next level, help guide us to a championship. That's the type of thing that Andre Drummond needs to do, not sit there and pout like a little bitch.
Yep, Andre Drummond being the very opposite of Steve Yzerman, if you may put it. And by the way, Aron Baynes finally decided to walk out like a bitch, like we all wanted him to. But speaking of which, but back to Andre Drummond. Of course, we all know about him. We know he's a mental midget. He making millions of money. Can't hit free throws. Can't take anything well. Can't take criticism. All that sour jazz.
I think the signs are there that he's seen this before, i.e. Dwight Howard in Orlando. That's one of the reasons why he lost his job, because it was seemingly at the behest of Howard, because Howard was that mentally himself, and because the management was such kowtowing to him that they wanted to do whatever they can to please him, that they ended up getting getting rid of Stan Van Gundy, and it's at the end of the day, it didn't do a lick of sense. Make a lick of difference because they ended up trading Howard anyway to the Lakers. Now, obviously, Stan Van Gundy not just being the head coach, but also president of basketball operations with Jeff Bauer as his GM. Of course, he has a little bit more power, more leverage in his situation to where he won't be so vulnerable as opposed to how the situation for him in Orlando ended. But you got to think that the signs are there of what he has seen before. And I'm sorry, at this point, I would rather cut my losses with Drummond than stick around and let him, his attitude or whatever it is, be one primary reason or justification as to why management would want me to step down from either one or both of my positions, if not a power, if not outright firing me. So I'm just saying, SVG, I like what he's done so far. I even like him better as a human being. But, he's got to do better in this regard. And that's going to lead me to segue into about the draft. I understand that the Pistons, one of their needs is to find a shooter and someone who can also contribute off the bench. In essence, on paper, you can make an argument that they did do that. However, I'm just going to have to get used to this because when you see the name and you see the school, great, another shooter from Duke, because Kyle Singler worked out so fucking well. So part of my skepticism and cynicism on that regard, you could say, and also this was a bit of a somewhat take the best player available that you wanted it because, guys that I looked at have been a nice pickup, whether it be Dennis Smith Jr. from NC State or Malik Monk. He went to the Hornets right before us. And, by the way, brief digression. Michael Jordan sure just loves to do shit like that to the Pistons in the draft, huh? So, again, minor conspiracy theory, but I digress. So Malik Monk was gone. Dennis Smith Jr. Josh Jackson was already gone, so I knew the Pistons were going to get him. Some were thinking, hey, maybe Donovan Mitchell, but instead they go, some would say, he was the safest of safe picks. But I didn't like how the commentators at ESPN, like one of the early words, the first word they used to describe how to make this pick was, he's crafty. Which is another one of the code words for, this dude maybe.
On ESPN, right?
Yeah, exactly. The code
ESPN sucks.
Yeah, I know, but the code words that they were using, the fans out there listening that know this, especially Michigan fans that deal with the commentators gushing, basically verbally blowing Aaron Kraft when he was with Ohio State, saying, he's a crafter, he's crafty, he's a scrapper, he's a glitter, and all that stuff. And, to use similar language to apply to Kennard here with his pick, I was like, oh, God, here we go again. So, now, again, I hope he proves me wrong, because, like I said, he's a shooter, and he scored well in college. We need something like that, or at least something of similar output and production up here in Detroit in the worst of ways. But it was just, lack of oomph was not there. It's like the proverbial dick tease of, you hear the rumors of, Drummond may get traded, you might get a 10th pick. Nope, that doesn't happen. Okay, and it's not just the Pistons, it seems to be. How's that happening? Because all the others are still on board. Jim Carlo, for lines. Nope, the fourth family likes him. That ain't gonna happen. Is Brad Houser gonna be fired yet? Nope, as far as I can see, because Chris Ellis for some fucking reason like the guy. It's the equivalent of trying to rub the tip on the nub without getting any insertion. Ultimate blue ball scenario.
Yeah, kind of like, is Ken Holland gonna get fired? No.
And while we branch back to I just want to say this for those that want to be clamoring for, if they could just fire Ken Holland and bring Steve Eisman, it'd be just picture perfect like Michigan Harbaugh. Here's the thing though that people seem to be forgetting. One big reason why Harbaugh came back home to Michigan is because Dave Brandon was no longer there. If Brandon was still the athletic director, Harbaugh would not come back. So it's the same thing applies here. As long as the Illiches are still on the family apparently Chris Ilge is the head honcho in charge. I doubt you're going to see Steve come back. Now, like I said, if and when the team is sold, that's one big hurdle right there. And then eventually, once Holland's found the pasture, then maybe I could see a potential opening. But that's if Stevie is not feeling, if he feels that he's done enough at Tampa, or he's what he's done at Tampa and wants to do the same and come on home and do it for the Wings. Now, if he does have great success with Tampa in the meanwhile, while we wait for Holland to slowly phase into fuck off territory, and by that time that opportunity comes up, maybe let's say Renzo Eisman has already won a cup or two as GM with the Lightning. It's going to be a tough sell to lure him away from that back home to his team, back home to the Red Wings, because Michigan was able to do that because Harbaugh hadn't won any Super Bowls, even though he went to those NFC title games. Whereas if Eisman wins a cup or two as GM of the Lightning, in my opinion, it's going to be tougher to steer him away from that already known cocoon of success that he's built himself to travel to this unknown venture of what this seems to be a current chaotic situation with the Wings.
Yeah, that's true.
And long story short, Detroit sports fans, I can't believe that I'm the person that's saying this, but in terms of everybody else on the spectrum, it's almost silly yet shocking that a team that has the most of an upwards chance to probably do something productive and positive-wise is, of all teams, the fucking Lions. And that's a shocker in and of itself to say.
We'll get to the Lions later on. Back to the Pistons here. Shooting guard Kentavious Caldwell-Pope suspended 2 games for his DUI arrest. Just 2 games while he was sentenced to 1 year of probation. But that's just a small mistake. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, but it's also a warning of please don't fuck up again and do this stupid shit again. Otherwise, there will be more harsher next time.
That's also fair.
So, it's little stuff like that, how you carry yourself off the court, not just on the court, but off the court as well, in my opinion, that should be a determining factor as to whether or not a team wants to give you $20 million a year. Yeah, think about that, Kentavious.
Yeah. Imagine what that could affect.
Could be a potential, not a red flag, but at least a stop sign.
Yeah, or maybe a yellow light unless I'm being too late.
A yellow on the warning of oncoming traffic.
Yep. And I was going to mention, back to Andre Drummond, the Clippers spoke to the Pistons about a DeAndre Jordan-Andre Drummond trade.
I would have laughed so hard. You're essentially swapping the same damn player. And for what? Yeah, Drummond, Jordan's a little bit better defensively, but he's just as shitty with his free throws as Drummond is.
Yeah. Yeah, and Stan Van Gundy knows that too, so.
Well, you would hope so.
Hopefully we can throw that out. We'll still keep an eye on it. That's what I was going to mention. So, one other thing that's worth Pistons and Red Wings wise in terms of news here: a federal judge denies a request to block funding tied to Detroit's new Little Caesars Arena from the suburbs of the city, according to the Score.com. U.S. District Court Judge Mark Goldsmith issued his decision late Monday, saying a requested injunction would cause catastrophic damage to Detroit. The lawsuit says the Michigan law prohibits spending school property tax revenue on the projects because tax voters approved in 2012 was to be used exclusively for Detroit's public schools. It said a vote for city residents was needed first. Activists Robert Davis and D. Edo Wilcoxon, who was running for city clerk, had sought to block the Detroit Downtown Development Authority from using the money. So, So apparently, they're probably gonna spread this whole thing around the entire metropolitan Detroit area. The way I see it. Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Because a tax voter approved it in 2012. It was to be used exclusively. So the Little Caesars Arena will either stay or be added to the suburbs of the city of Detroit. So that's just some news for you folks. So, speaking of Michigan,
For three, yes, sir.
Their basketball team has lost power forward DJ Wilson, who was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks at number 17 overall. Another first-round pick under Beeline, as you mentioned before.
That's now the sixth first-rounder that John Beeline has turned from recruit, and believe it or not, most, if not all of them, have been 3 stars. So imagine what more experience he could do with more 4 and 5 stars as opposed to 3 stars. And in my opinion, it's a great testament in terms of coaching up talent that you could possibly see, and John Beeline has that in spades. Now, for DJ Wilson, personally, this is, in my opinion, a very good team position for himself to be in. With the Bucks, they already have the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. They also have Thon Maker. They have other key players and role players in side positions as well. Greg Monroe, former Piston, one of them. So, in my opinion, DJ Wilson could find himself into as much of a good spot as possible outside of going to Cleveland or Golden State. So, I'm happy for him, proud for him. And, I could definitely, if he stays with this team long term, you could possibly see him contribute in a playoff series sometime in the near future. So, happy for DJ, and of course happy for Beeline and the program because of what the reputation this means now. You've brought along, you've produced another first-round prospect. Hopefully this means it will help you out better with recruiting, but that's still yet to be seen.
So, let's touch on Derek Walton Jr. He goes on drafted real quick. What happened?
I think it's a combination of, there's a lot of guards. Because remember, for example, if the top 2 picks of the overall draft were point guards, that lets you know of how some people were valuing that position. And also, Derek Walton, as good of a player I think he is, just wasn't commanding that much of attention per se, as opposed to Markelle Fultz or Alonzo Ball or Frank Mason, and so on. Derek Smith, I mentioned him, and so on and so forth. He's a good player, but his game itself wasn't too much of a standout to where it could probably, sway public opinion from a GM to say, hey, let's get this player. This kid has a bright future. Now, I still think Walton, whoever signs him, he'll get a good chance to show out. He'll be going to the G League. That it used to be called the D League, as you all know, but because I guess due to the Gatorade partnership, it's now called the G League. Whatever. More than likely, he'll be heading there first, and then I guess in about a year or so, he'll get his opportunity. You can treat it like as close to a minor league deal equivalent, if you could say that, if you're an undrafted free agent or something like that. So I know Derek's a hard worker. He developed a good jump shot in his last season, and it seems, in my opinion, his best aspect as a point guard is not just distributing the ball very well, but also for some reason he seems to be always near around the ball to get the offensive rebounds. And for a point guard, it's quite key. It shows your versatility, shows you can be seen as a valuable commodity by some teams to help off the bench, and especially for young players starting off. So I have no doubt Derek is going to find a team at least in the NBA. In my opinion, it'll be stupid if any team doesn't sign him or give him a chance to prove his worth.
Yep. Well, we were going to get to the Lions, and they're next. So let's get to that.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
To them. We got a lot of information about a possible contract extension in terms of Matthew Stafford, their quarterback. General Manager Bob Quinn felt confident the team will reach a contract extension deal with quarterback Matthew Stafford over the summer. President Rod Wood added, quote, whatever it takes to get it done. Now, Mike Freeman's 10-point stance on Bleacher Report, bullet point number 2, it's good to be the quarterback. One AFC general manager believes the free agency of Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford in 2018 will have long-reaching effects on the league. That AFC GM predicted, quote, Stafford's new deal will be in the $25 million a year range and could be slightly higher. So they're talking about like 26, 30, somewhere around there, maybe even 35, but no higher. But the key to
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the key to watch is Aaron Rodgers. If Stafford gets a new deal for that much, I can't blame Aaron for wanting more. Stafford's deal could lead to a showdown between Aaron and the Packers. Rodgers has a contract that lasts through 2019. He will make approximately $12.6 million this year, $20 million next year, and another $20 million the year after that. If Stafford does get $25 million a season, watch Rodgers' reaction closely. He could beat Stafford by like $5 million with $30 million, for example.
The Derek Carr contract situation, I think, provides a great influence, but not just this Stafford deal, but also, like you mentioned, the upcoming Rodgers deal. I could see Stafford getting at least 25 minimum. That would be his, the asking price of what his agent would want. 25 per annually, bare minimum. In terms of length of contract, at least 5, if not 6 years. You want to add a player option or whatever. I don't see gargantuan amount that's saying something concerning you're playing a guy $25 million a year for a 5-6 year deal. So that's just over 150, if not more. So it's big money, but in my opinion, it's needed money because I'll just tell you this right now. I've been saying it for I'm sure people can tell from the gist of it. The only reason I even care about the Lions is Matthew Stafford. He was their MVP until he got hurt. Even still, he performed well as best he possibly could with that hurt finger for the remainder of that season. It affected his play, obviously, but also didn't help that his defense was complete shit as well. So what else can you do? But like I mentioned before, with Stafford, his value to that team, if he wasn't there, I wouldn't care as nowhere near as much as I would right now. So, in my opinion, especially with the upgrade that you put to your offensive line to protect him, granted, left tackle, which is actually arguably the most important spot, period, of your whole line, that's a bit of a kerfuffle right now. So you play your chance cards with that, as much as you can. But, yeah, I give Stafford money as much as possible and as soon as possible.
Well, we're going to have to be patient on that one. It can happen over the summer, and it will.
Yeah, there's still time. There's still time. The fact that the talks are going, makes you feel confident, as opposed to not doing anything, which allowed for Ndamukong Suh to walk out the door on you, which I'm still bitter over.
Yep, he's in the final year of his contract, but I'm pretty sure they'll get it done. Other notes. In terms of the Lions, defensive tackle Khyri Thornton suspended 6 games for violating the NFL substance abuse policy. There was one other NFL player being suspended for an entire season for violating the same thing. the same policy, the NFL substance abuse policy. Forgot what that name was, but Khyri Thornton suspended 6 games instead of the entire season. That's a bit. That's either way. That's different. That's all I know.
Yeah. I mean, unless it was depending on what he took, or whether or not this is his first time at bench, or whatever the case it was, factored into that decision. So.
Yep. And then the other note: safety Tavon Wilson of the Lions was accused of attacking a baby mama, as actually his ex-girlfriend, mind you. He was sued for $2.5 million. He denied allegations, so the Lions probably are going to be playing without him too. And let me pull this up here. This was from TMZ.com. His ex-girlfriend filed a lawsuit on him. Her name is Alanda Jackson, who dated Wilson from 2011 to 2014. They have a 3-year-old child together. She encountered Wilson at Bliss nightclub on May 14th, where she got into a verbal altercation with Wilson's current girlfriend, Simone Leach. While Alanda and Simone were arguing, Wilson allegedly grabbed Alanda, threw her to the ground, and began punching her in the face several times. Alanda claims the attack lasted several minutes before security broke it up. In her suit, Alanda claims a female friend who was with her at a club was stabbed by a member of Tavon's entourage during the melee. Both women were hospitalized. Oh man, that's devastating. But we gotta keep reading this. Alanda claims she suffered major injuries in the attack, including a broken nose, a black eye, and cuts on her back. She's suing for more than $2.5 million. The other alleged victim is also suing Tavon, claiming the NFL player ordered his entourage to fuck him up when the initial verbal altercation took place. TMZ contacted D.C. police, who confirmed a report was filed at the time of the incident, but Alanda was the one arrested because Simone claimed she was the real victim. Wilson is fighting both lawsuits. He's asked the judge to throw them both out because he's a pussy, I may add. We reached out to Wilson's camp for comment. So far, no word back. A liar and a pussy. He knows he's the only one that should be in trouble. Or at least the main guy that should be in more trouble than those two ladies. But I'm glad they're both not dead. They're still alive, thankfully.
Yeah, but still very inexcusable, if true, with the action and conduct of Wilson here.
Yep. So the Lions are going to have to get a new safety. They're going to have to do something with Tavon Wilson, maybe release him.
Again, they're going to wait. Now, they're going to let him have his day in court, let due diligence with the process play itself out. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that were to happen, though.
Of course. So, that's all the material we've covered in this episode. Now it's time for 5 questions. Are you ready, Ed?
Ready as you are, Tess. Just go ahead and let.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1. Should the Tigers option relief pitcher Daniel Stump back to the AAA Toledo Mudhens? He was called up, and then the last 2 outings, he pitched scoreless. The last inning, he pitched a scoreless inning. I'm not sure about about this one. I'm leaning between yes and no. On
Yeah,
a balance game here.
Here's my option of answer. It's called "Who Gives a Shit." The team is terrible no matter what they do.
Yep.
So this is.
Next question.
Who's where they are right now. It's not going to make a wicked difference no matter what in the end.
Uh-huh. Question number 2. What are the chances the Tigers retain their salary in order to trade Justin Verlander?
Well, in terms of retaining their salary, I doubt anybody else is going to want that contract. I mean, for instance, granted, it's an extreme example, but the Yankees couldn't move A-Rod's big albatross of contract. So I wouldn't be so sure with Verlander's age the way it's at right now. What else wants to 10-foot pole? That's why every year.
Yeah, we apologize for the technical difficulties.
Next question.
Yeah, I think like I said, same thing about the client. Most teams that probably haven't been asking with any assets or trade chips because they don't want to touch that contract more than anything. That's why they're going after the more affordable guys like the Ian Kinslers or the J.D. Martinez's for prime example. So unless some type of restructure could happen, where it'll be put in a position where it'll be much more healthier contract for other teams to want to eat up, I doubt Verlander and for that matter Cabrera would be traded. So in essence, the saving graces that's keeping them as Tigers for now would be their current contracts that they're attached to.
Next question.
Question number 3. Could Red Wings goaltender Peter Mrazek been picked up by the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL Expansion Draft? I'd say yes.
Well, I had answered earlier, like I mentioned before, my reasoning with them already, in my mind, they were going to select Marc-Andre Fleury no matter what. It took away their need for them wanting to get Mrazek or any other noteworthy starting goalie that was unprotected. So, sure, Mrazek is a good option, but like I said, there's a new team that wants to sell tickets. What better way than to give a guy who made his name playing for the now recent back-to-back Cup champions, played a key role in helping getting that second cup. So, third overall for him in his career. So, I'm not surprised that they made that move. And, of course, that checks out their need of wanting to get another impactful goaltender. So, that saved Mrazek's ass.
Next question.
Yep. Question number 4. Is there any NBA team that could acquire Aron Baynes now that he's finally declined his option with the Pistons and become a free agent?
Yeah, I mean, there's with the way the salary cap is, if you're available, if you're a body, you're going to get 18 out of 30 that's going to pay for you. I mean, for goodness sakes, the Lakers paid over $60 million for Timothy Mozgov. They just traded that contract to the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, so I'm sure there's other teams out there, whether it be Portland or Denver or even Phoenix, for example. There's going to be a team out there that's going to require a need for his spot. And hey, it'll serve 2 birds with 1 stone, in my opinion. It'll get him paid and get him the fuck off of my team for good. So I'm happy. Go chase greener pastures.
I, for one, am definitely happy about that.
Next question.
Finally, question number 5. How do you grade the Pistons in the 2017 NBA Draft?
I give it a C+. The only reason I'm giving it that type of passing grade per se is because it took care of one of their needs. I'm still skeptical of the name and how the pick itself will play out. Hence my current grade. Now, if he proves me all wrong, I'll be more than happy to admit I'm wrong. But at the moment, I'm content with the grade that I have right now.
Mm-hmm. And here's a bonus question. What are the chances the Pistons trade Andre Drummond at all after the draft?
Well, if they want to trade him now, I doubt they'll trade him before the season starts. Maybe some steam, some noise to pick up again around the trade deadline for next season. That would be my current safe bet.
Yeah.
If they do anything. If they do anything.
Kind of like now or never, huh?
Yeah, basically. If you're not going to trade him at this point, who knows what type of good deal that you could get down the road, especially knowing that he's going to be earning $28 million right before his contract expires, making him an unrestricted free agent.
Uh-huh. So that's our 5 questions segment for all the listeners and fans out there. If you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. That's episode 270, but before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this podcast, this episode, and our entire podcast on social media, and have their friends share that as well, because I wanted to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, you can follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio DET, at Sports Radio Det, and send them a direct message, or email them at sportsradiodetroit.com in the contact section, or email its owner Roger Castillo at rodcast81@gmail.com. Also like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group, and finally find their podcast available on iTunes and Podbean. Ed, great job again as always, but enjoy your time off. Just let me know when you're ready to come back.
Absolutely, Taylor. Thank you so much.
Yep, prayers passed along once again.
Thank you.
Yep. And you can follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips. And like the Michigan Sports Truth Facebook page and join its Facebook group. We'll talk to you next week on episode 271 when Frank Bashner and Buck Gino fill in for Ed Smith and join me to talk about the NHL free agency. Thanks very much for listening and downloading. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.